nothingness and our humility, then you have the makings of a spiritual giant. Servitude, you see, is the greatest station that God has destined for man. There is no greater station than the station of servitude for man. In fact, there are three stations, he says, in the world. The station of God, which is above us, the station of the manifestations of God, which is above us, and the station of man is that of servitude. Servitude. And Abdul-Baha was the true servant. No person on this earth will ever reach him as low as that in servitude. Because when you go in servitude, you go down, further down, not up. You cannot be a servant and have ambition to become somebody. There is no station for anybody in this faith. And this is a great protection for all of us. If you want to think of a station for somebody, servitude. To be low, to be, Abdul-Baha says, make me a dust in the path of thy loved ones. This is true. A dust in the path of loved ones. If ever somebody thinks of saying I, this is a very bad word to use, I, or my. It's really a bad word. It's the word which has caused all the troubles in the world. But utter nothingness come to us when we see the great ocean of revelation of Baha'u'llah. You cannot artificially become humble. And humility come only to us when we see the greatness of the revelation of Baha'u'llah. Now Abdul-Baha became that embodiment of servitude. And he himself begged Baha'u'llah to give him that station when he was a child. When Abdul-Baha was a child of about 10 years of age in Baghdad, he had recognized the station of his father. And I mentioned that he recognized it, really recognized who he was. We haven't recognized him. We cannot recognize him. We can only recognize him to a limited degree. Abdul-Baha's recognition and the recognition of the Bab as to the station of Baha'u'llah was so complete that it is beyond us. You know that often people think that because Abdul-Baha was the son of Baha'u'llah, well, you know how it is between the father and the son. There is always an intimate relationship of intimacy and there is no conventions there. You know, at home when you're alone, you're just very, very relaxed and absolutely free, and there is no restrictions. You're a member of a family, and this is your father, and this is the son, and who knows what the sons these days do to their fathers, and vice versa. But anyhow, we have a very, very intimate relationship. And some people may think that Abdul-Baha had the same relationship with his father. Well, he didn't. Although there was this love between them naturally. But Abdul-Baha had so recognized the station of Baha'u'llah as being the Lord of Lords, as being the manifestation, the supreme manifestation of God, that he considered himself as his humblest servant. He would never, in the ordinary time when everybody was out of the house, he would never give himself the liberty of suddenly walking into the room of Baha'u'llah. He would not go in without getting permission, without prostrating himself at his feet. You see, he had recognized him who he was. It wasn't his heavenly, it wasn't his earthly father. It was God revealed to man. He had recognized that. We haven't recognized it. And therefore he knew what humility meant towards his father. You have heard many stories of Abdul-Baha approaching the house in which his father was living, for instance, in the mansion of Bahji. When Abdul-Baha was in Akka and he was in the Bahji, you have heard that story, I'm sure many of you. He used to ride his donkey to go from Akka to the mansion of Bahji. But as soon as he saw the mansion from distance, he would dismount from his donkey, because it is in the conventions of the East. And one of the signs of respect towards your Lord, if you are a servant of somebody, you never go riding to your servant. You must to your Lord. If you are a servant, you never ride to go to see your Lord. You always walk. And so Abdul-Baha would dismount from his donkey as a respect towards, just as soon as he saw from 1 mile distance the mansion of Bahji, he would dismount. He would walk. He said he would never go riding to his Lord. And then Baha'u'llah, what a love he had towards Abdul-Baha. The outpouring of love and adoration that he had for him was something again out of this world. He often, when he would hear that Abdul-Baha is coming to the mansion of Bahji, for example, as soon as he would hear, he would make the whole household and everyone who was around there to be vigilant to see when the master is arriving from distance, and he would send all the men who were there, every person, to go as a welcoming party a mile or two ahead. The master is coming, he said. And he himself would stand on the balcony watching, waiting for the master to come. And those who were with him, usually female members of the household or some of the disciples who were there, women disciples and who were in that household, he would look to them and say, look at the master. Look at the way he walks. Look at his majesty. Look at his powers. You see? Now this is a love relationship between the two, but one is the Lord and one is the servant. Now one, Baha'u'llah, you can consider him like a summit of a lofty mountain. And Abdul-Baha, the lowest servant, the lowest valley. The lowest valley. No one can reach him as low as that. The lowest valley down there. And then when the water pours down from the top of the mountain, where does it accumulate? It accumulates in the lowest valley. And this is how Abdul-Baha, you see, one of the distinguishing features of this revelation, and this you have all studied, the covenant, one of the distinguishing features of this revelation is that Baha'u'llah has brought his revelation for us. But unlike the prophets of the past, he never gave it to us. He brought it for us, but he didn't give it to us, his revelation. He gave them to Abdul-Baha. This is the meaning of the covenant. All the forces of the revelation of Baha'u'llah, all the forces that he released for 40 years of his ministry, he poured it within the person of Abdul-Baha. Abdul-Baha became the reservoir of the revelation of Baha'u'llah. It's like this glass in here. This glass contains all the water that is therein. See? Abdul-Baha became a container. Baha'u'llah had brought for us two things in this dispensation, and not more and not less. One was his revelation, and one was the person of Abdul-Baha. And these two things is all that God has given to mankind in this age. And Abdul-Baha became here like a container of the revelation of Baha'u'llah. And although he did not have the powers, although he was not a manifestation of God, he had the powers of the manifestation of God conferred upon him by virtue of containing all that revelation within him. And so what did Baha'u'llah tell us? He says to us this. This is his message. This is the gist of the covenant. He says, everything I have brought for you is with Abdul-Baha. Go and get it from him. It is nowhere else. Outside Abdul-Baha, nothing exists. It's within him. This is the meaning of the covenant. So you see, because he really received the revelation of Baha'u'llah on behalf of all humanity, and held it there and protected it, just like a wall that you put around an ocean. And it was an ocean of revelation. And that wall, many people tried to break through. The covenant breakers during his ministry. You should study that turbulent history of the faith during those 29 years. They tried to break through this great wall of this ocean and to get to this water of life. But Abdul Baha, and a few of the believers who rallied around him like lions. They protected this covenant, this cause. And so they couldn't break through. And today, of course, it's a different story. That wall of the covenant is so strong that it will be foolish to think anybody can even think in terms of breaking through it. It's a tremendous revelation, really. And Abdul Baha and Baha'u'llah here have this reciprocal goal of one complementing the other, bringing to us the revelation of Baha'u'llah. Well, friends, I think we should take a break here, and then I will probably remember some of the things that I have forgotten. We will see. Do you think we can start again? You people must be exhausted, huh? Having been sitting here and listening. Well, where were we now? We were trying to understand something. Very little we can understand, remember, of the revelation of God. It's beyond us. We can get impressions of it, but not really to understand it fully. We were trying to understand something of the greatness of this revelation, and therefore appreciate the power of the words which are revealed to us in this day by Baha'u'llah. And we were talking about the revelation, how it came to him, how with such forcefulness, with such rapidity, the words were revealed in this age, that the world has been filled with the great ocean. It's like an ocean, really, of revelation. You know, Baha'u'llah has revealed, as I said, the words with such rapidity that within 1 hour, 1,000 verses would have been revealed. To describe this for you and to show you the relationship of this revelation with the revelations of the past, we can look back and see the revelation of Islam, the revelation of the Quran. The Quran, which is the book of Islam, took 23 years to be revealed, and that is over 6,000 verses. Well, mankind needed only that. When the Bab appeared, his revelation was so much more profuse in pouring out his words that it took him 6 hours to reveal 1,000 verses. Now Baha'u'llah would reveal that in 1 hour. 6 times, almost 6 times faster than that of the Bab. It's very difficult to imagine what it is like to be placed in that time when revelation came to him. And when the revelation came to him, it was so powerful. The influence upon his own physical body was such that he says whenever revelation came to him, it was as if his body was put on fire. All the limbs of his body was put on fire. And this is why people could not fully look into his face at the time of revelation. They would be so overwhelmed if they did. There were so many people who tried to peep in the room where Baha'u'llah was revealing, and they could not stand it, and some of them fainted. Baha'u'llah would give permission to some of the followers, some of his disciples who begged to see the revelation. that he would allow them to come in. And they would come in and they would stand there for 1 or 2 minutes only. And then Baha'u'llah, with a movement of his hand, would dismiss them, which knew that they could not take it. And those people were so shaken during that experience. The experience was so much soul-stirring that in one of his tablets, Baha'u'llah says, if man was not weak, if God had not created man as a weak creature, we are weak creatures really, in one sense. If man was not weak, we would have allowed all people to come and witness the revelation of the Word of God. But they cannot stand it. You see? So, for 40 years, in this way, divine revelation had been pouring upon mankind. And as I said, it has drowned this world in an ocean of revelation. And yet we have only a portion of that revelation in writing. A portion of it. Because there were so many days and nights in the life of Baha'u'llah that he poured out from his lips the Word of God, revealed so many things which were not recorded. When he was those years in the mountains of Kurdistan, all that was revealed was released into the air, into the open air, and that was all, for 2 years. And when Baha'u'llah came to Baghdad, Nabil mentions that for some years, every day and night, the equivalent of the Quran would have been revealed by Baha'u'llah within every 24 hours and not recorded. And even there came a time that Baha'u'llah ordered his secretary. At one stage in Baghdad, he was so disappointed from mankind and humanity and those people who were supposed to be his follower or followers of the Bab. He was so much distressed with their attitude and their condition that he asked his amanuensis, his secretary, to take a great portion of his writings, wash them and throw them into the river, saying mankind is not worthy of it in this age. So you see, it's a great, great ocean. And Abdul Baha has added to this yet further of his explanations and elucidations, and he has enriched the Baha'i, the writings of Baha'u'llah. Baha'u'llah has left behind about 15,000 tablets. And some of these tablets may be 1 page, some of them may be 100 pages, 50 pages. Abdul Baha has left behind something in the order of 26 or 27,000 tablets during the 29 years of his ministry. Again, the size of these tablets vary very much indeed. Shoghi Effendi, the guardian of the faith, has left behind also something in the order of 26 or 27,000 letters, some of which were so lengthy that they merited to be published in the form of books. Such things as the advent of divine justice, the promised days come. These were letters of Shoghi Effendi. They were not books. The National Assembly of the United States decided to publish them and to give it a name and to put subtitles for it, as you've noticed. All these letters of the world order of Baha'u'llah which are included in that, each one of them is a letter. The only book that Shoghi Effendi wrote was God Passes By, which is a history of the 100 years of the faith. So you see how much information we have, how much guidance we have. You see, the world is full of it, and how all these writings have to be compiled and edited and indexed so that we can have access to it. Those of you who were there last night, I was mentioning how when I was a child, I used to hear from the Baha'is in Persia that how can we go and teach the faith all over the world with donkeys, because they had never seen any other form of transportation. They could not visualize anything else. And the answer was that God will create the means for it. God will create the means. And now we can see the means here. I mean, you travel with the speed of sound now, or double the speed of sound. So you see, when the faith needs it, it'll be created for it. This communication which has come into being is in order that the message of Baha'u'llah may reach to all mankind. Without it, the faith of Baha'u'llah would have been really meaningless. To have a religion which is for the whole world and yet not being able to communicate. And as days goes on, and as the needs of the faith are more and more apparent, then God will create the means for it. I have mentioned this maybe to some of you. You may have heard me saying this. I believe firmly that every time that the faith goes through different stages of growth, and it's growing constantly. And as you need the means, it'll be given to us. Some 30 years ago, when I was in Dublin, I wanted to make a telephone call to Tehran. And it took me 2 days to arrange it. Because you have to find out, you have to see who you're going to speak in Tehran with. You couldn't have a direct communication, a telephone. And that they would send a telegram to him, and he would come to the post office at a certain time, a certain hour, and we would go to the post office in our end at a certain time and a certain hour. And then by radio telephone, after 3 days of arrangement, we could speak together. Well, that was good enough. But today, the faith is moving with such force. The Baha'i world is becoming so active internationally. We have to be able to crisscross each other around the world. That you want to lift up your telephone at home and say to your friend, I'm coming, instead of today, I'm coming tomorrow. You have to be able to do it. And you see, the means are created for it. Always the means, as the faith grows, the means for its communications will grow with it. Otherwise, we couldn't work. We could not have an international community if we did not have these simple facilities which we take it for granted. We couldn't. 30 years ago, you could not have traveled from London to here. You may have traveled with great difficulties, probably, so many places and difficulties. 40 years ago, certainly you couldn't. And there was no need for a person like me or somebody to come from England to here. There was no need for it. We did not have this universal relationship. There was a time that the faith was local in its functioning. When I was a young person, the faith has a local characteristic. Although we knew it was for the whole of mankind and the world, but our vision would not go beyond our local communities, because we were cut off from the rest of the world, from the rest of the country even. In our little village, for instance, if only a person would go once a year to the capital, it would be considered as one of the greatest acts he had done, to go to the capital. And when he came back, he would be considered as a very special man who had been to the capital. We did not have newsletters coming in every month like this. We did not have any of these things. The faith was really having a local characteristics. We used to teach in our town. We had the tablets of Baha'u'llah and Abdul Baha and the writings of Shoghi Effendi. Whenever it came, it would reach us. Occasionally, every 6 months, maybe we would hear something from the Central Assembly in Tehran. So you see, the faith was local in character. Our visions was local. And then, it was like this until Shoghi Effendi really gave us the vision of national consciousness. And this happened in the 1940s. In America, it started in 1937 when the first 7-year plan came. And then in here, they acquired a consciousness that you shouldn't be concerned with your own town, but that you should be concerned for the whole country. But in the rest of the world, it was in 1940s. The Shoghi Effendi gave plans to various countries. And in those days, there were 7 or 8 national assemblies only. And to these 7 or 8 national assemblies in the 1940s, Shoghi Effendi gave them a plan to extend their teaching activities in other towns. And the idea occurred to us that we can and we should communicate with each other. And then the national communication was such that we could go from one town to another. We had then cars coming in. We could travel from place to place, from one town to another. And we acquired gradually, until 1953, we acquired the national consciousness. The faith rose up from a local level into a national level. In every country in the world, people began to act as one nation. You could see that. People pioneered from one end of the country to the other to form local spiritual assemblies. And so he rose up from that state of local into national. And it wasn't until Shoghi Effendi launched a 10-year crusade with which he brought the whole world together. And it didn't happen right away. It happened 10 years later. In 1963, when we had this Jubilee celebrations in London, in the Albert Hall in London, when we realized we became an international community, we acquired a consciousness of international consciousness. Then it was the whole world. Baha'is began to travel from one end of the world to the other. We used to send pioneers from one country to another country, one end of the world to the other. But in the 1940s, it wasn't even conceivable that somebody could pioneer, say, from Persia to England. It was impossible to even think about it. You wouldn't think in such terms. If you wanted to pioneer, you would only go to a town in your own country. So you see how we raised from local into national into international community. And as we rose in these conditions, the world facilities, the physical facilities, rose with it. When we became an international community, we needed to communicate with each other on an international level, and gradually these facilities were created for us. You know, I was talking about the writings of Baha'u'llah. I was saying how vast it is. I was talking about the writings of Abdul Baha. I was saying how vast they are. And the same thing with Shoghi Effendi's. But do you realize that during the lifetime of Shoghi Effendi, who was the guardian of the faith, none of these writings were indexed. None of them. None of them was in a form that you could try and say, I want on such and such a subject, what Baha'u'llah has said about this, that you could find it. All this great many writings, it was not indexed. And Shoghi Effendi did not need it to be indexed. He was divinely guided. You asked him a question and he would reply to you. He would say this means this and that means this and you should do this, you should do that. But when the House of Justice came into being, in 1963, it was a different story. The House of Justice realized that they could not work, they could not give guidance unless they knew what Baha'u'llah has said on that subject, what Abdul Baha had said about that subject, what Shoghi Effendi has said about that subject. But how were they going to find it? With all this writings of Baha'u'llah, which is an ocean, I described to you the immensity of the writings. How can they pass a resolution without looking at the writings? They couldn't. And so the first thing they did was to have this research department established. And in this research department, the first thing they did, they began to index the writings of Shoghi Effendi, or how they did it. I remember looking at the way they were working in those days, in 1963. They would read the letter of Shoghi Effendi and they would see in one page there are 5 questions, 5 different subjects. Well, the ideal thing was to take 5 copies and put each one in a file. That's what you would do. Each one a different subject. Now, do you realize that perhaps you may be surprised to hear this, but something very simple nowadays we have, and it's called a photocopier. Well, that machine became available commercially just at the time that the House of Justice came into being. Before that, it didn't exist. And if we didn't have that simple, straightforward machine, how would you be able to copy 26,000 letters, each page 5 times? You know, put it in their files. Impossible. It came just in time. It didn't come at the time of Shoghi Effendi. He didn't need it. But as we needed it, it came into being. And I remember when they were making these indexes, someone told me this. He He said, we have got now 500 subjects on a master index, the card indexes. 500 subjects. How can you remember them? How can you know which is which? You will forget it tomorrow, what you have written on the first page. The mind could not conceive it, could not take it. And then came the computer. It took over. And now you go and ask them, you go and ask a question. I want to know what Shoghi Effendi has said about that subject, what Baha'u'llah has said about that subject. You just ask them, and this is what the House of Justice does. As soon as you ask a question from the House of Justice, they will ask their research department to see what Shoghi Effendi has said about it, if he any, what Abdul Baha has said about it, if any. And with the press of a button, you get the answers where to look for them. And it is copied, put in front of the members of the House of Justice. They know now what is involved. Do you see how, as the faith needs it, things will come for us? Now, how can you imagine the House of Justice could have worked in any other way? How could they give guidance in an ocean of writings without these facilities? But these facilities were not here at the time of Abdul Baha. These facilities were not here at the time of Shoghi Effendi. They came into being just in time. And I can assure you that as time goes on, and as the speed of the growth of the faith increases, and when great numbers come into the faith, and we are going to be faced with complexities of administration, which we now cannot even imagine how we're going to handle it, facilities will be created for us. The world, all these things will be solved. God will create the means. I told you this yesterday. This is what I remember I heard this when I was 8 years of age. When the believers could not imagine they can travel throughout the world on donkeys. And they had never seen a bicycle even. They couldn't visualize any form of transportation. And they were asking, how can we go? And the answer was, this is the cause of God. It will create the means for it. And now, it will create the means for everything we need. Well, friends, we have seemingly gone away from our subject quite a long way back. We have to bring you back again. We were talking about reading the words of God in the morning and in the evening. Do you remember that? Or have you forgotten it? Yes. Well, if we read the words in that spirit that I mentioned, and knowing that the power is latent within these words, then it will influence our hearts. We must also know, going back to the Word of God again, that the Word of God is creative. Everything which is uttered by the manifestation of God, it operates, it becomes effective. Even that, whatever that word may be, I will give you an example of this. Over 100 years ago, when Baha'u'llah was living in a tiny little room in a house in Akka. Some of you have already been on pilgrimage. You have seen the little house of Udi Khammar, which is part of the house of Aboud. Now, there is a little room in which they tell you that he revealed here the Kitab-e-Aqdas, the most holy book. There is nothing in this revelation greater than the revelation of the Kitab-e-Aqdas. This is one thing you can be sure of. There's nothing greater than this revelation of the Kitab-e-Aqdas. Of all the writings of Baha'u'llah, this one stands out. And in this book, Baha'u'llah wrote 4 or 5 lines. Can you imagine writing 4 or 5 downs in that small, depressing little room? And in that 4 or 5 lines, this is what he said. He said, in every locality, in every town, establish a house of justice in my name. And 9 people or more should become members of this, or something to this effect. I'm paraphrasing his words. And he did not write any more about it, or press us, or push us, or keep on reminding us about it. He just wrote those few lines, and he went. Now, look at what those few lines have done to the world in our communities. Look at what it has done. Tens of thousands of families have left their homes have given up their jobs, have sacrificed everything they had, have gone to the most inhospitable parts of the world. Why did they do that? They went there in order to fulfill these words of Baha'u'llah. As pioneers to form local spiritual assemblies, which are the nucleus of those houses of justice which Baha'u'llah has ordered. You see the creativity of the word? And now we have about 30,000 of these institutions. 30,000 of them. And we are not going to stop here and say, well, this is a difficult job. And really it is. It's the most difficult job to form assemblies. You realize this. We are not going to say, well, look, this is too much. Let us drop it. We have enough. Let us do all the other teachings of Baha'u'llah, but not this one. We are not going to say that. On the contrary, we're going to continue and continue and continue until such time that every locality on the surface of this earth will have its house of justice. You see the creativity of the word now? Without forcing anybody? People give their lives for establishing local spiritual assemblies today. These are not words, this is the truth. People have given their lives for the establishment of these institutions. So much sacrifice have gone into it that if you study the history of the building up of these institutions, which have been brought about by pioneering movements all over the world, people of all colors and classes and races, not that they're all Europeans or Americans or Persians who do this, peoples of all colors and classes and backgrounds, speaking all kinds of languages, they have arisen with the same spirit to promote this principle, this very 4 lines in the Kitab-i-Aqdas. That's all they're doing. You see now the creativity of the word, how the word of God is created, penetrates into the hearts. Now this is, so when we recite the words in the morning and in the evening, we must remember these things. We must remember it's the word of our Creator. We must remember the way it was revealed. We must remember that these words are creative. We must remember that these words penetrate into the hearts. It has infinite significances and meanings and powers within it. And then, of course, it will affect us. And also, above all, we must look at that great ocean. Never leave it out of our sight. You remember the story of the drop and the ocean? We must always look at the greatness of that ocean of revelation, and then we become humble, and then these words will penetrate into our hearts. And so when we read the words, when I read the words, when you read the words in the morning, recite them, and then you go to your work, we will remember it. We must remember it. And when you are dealing with business, in your business, whatever it is, from time to time, let the thought of Baha'u'llah come to your mind. Let it flash into your mind, Baha'u'llah, his words that you have read this morning. Just flash it. It comes as a flash in your mind. And it becomes like a sharp electric impulse in our bodies. And even the man who is looking at you is not a Baha'i. He could notice a difference in you. There is something happens. You just are a different person. You've just been in communing with him in that instant without interfering with your work. And so you see, in this way, the food is being digested now. What we have read, they'll penetrate into our hearts. And then you become hungry when you get home to read more of the words of God. When we started this sort of discussions and talks in some European countries, especially in Ireland, that I live there, and the Irish people are very, very spiritual people. Very spiritual people. They took it to heart. And one of them asked a question, a very genuine question. He said, look, in the mornings, I have in such a rush to go to my work. I can't read the writings. And of course you realize this. The Baha'u'llah says you must read it in the morning and in the evening. If I don't read it in the morning, and then the evening comes, I have, as if I've gone out without my breakfast, spiritual breakfast. And I'm afraid Baha'u'llah had not said that it doesn't matter if you didn't read it in the morning, it doesn't matter, lump them together and read it one go. It says in the morning and in the evening. I'm sorry. And there is a reason for it is, as I mentioned today, it's that these words may penetrate into our hearts. Just like food that you eat, you have the food in the morning, you have to take the food in the evening. So, it's very important. When I go to my office and I'm very busy and I have not read the words in the morning, and then the morning comes and goes, and then when I go home, I've missed reading the writings. And they said, what are we going to do? Because some people said, we can't do it in the mornings. We can't get up earlier. There we are. And we are tired in the mornings. You know, some people stay very late nights for some reason. And then in the mornings they can't get up. I've seen many of them like that. Especially in summer schools, it's like this. Always the classes in the morning is absolutely empty. And people, to such an extent that I know in some countries they have come to the conclusion that classes in the morning shouldn't start until 11:30. They just can't help it. No matter what they do, people are staying till 3 in the morning, 4 in the mornings, having all kinds of fun and talks and late night sessions. And somehow people like late night sessions, as we call them, you know, which is informal, sitting together and talking, than the official lectures. So, now, what are we going to do, he said. I said, I'm tired in the mornings. No time. Well, the idea came, why not take a book with you to your office? You can't let this day pass without reading the words. So take a book with you, one of the writings of Baha'u'llah. And so it became customary for some people to take the hidden words with them. And then they find 10 minutes to sit down at some place and read it. You see, this is important to be serious about it and to be regular. It's no use to read it this week and then next week saying, oh yes, we must read every day. I read last week one passage, I'll read one passage this week. You know, it's just saying I've eaten my food last month and I'm going to have another feed today. You know, Baha'u'llah has said every morning and every evening. And he said, if you don't read it, you are not faithful to the covenant of God. I tell you a story. A few months, 2 months ago, we were in Paris. And we were staying with some friends. My wife and family, and we were all staying with some friends. We had an Irish young lady who we knew she was in Paris also. And we invited her to come and stay that night with us so that we could see her. Oh, she said, I would love to come. But she said, I'm in town now. I can't go home. I have no pajamas to bring with me. I have no toothbrush. Oh, these people said, we'll give it to you. Doesn't matter. Come on in. She said to me, you know, there is another problem. Now all of this happening to visiting. I said, what is the problem? She said, these people we are staying with, they have no English books. No. She said, I must read the writings tonight and tomorrow morning. I have no books with me. Have you got an English book that you can give it to me of the writings of Baha'u'llah for tonight and tomorrow morning? So that she could come and stay. You see now how serious it is? This is how they have taken it to their hearts. And now the faith is growing there with beautiful qualities of people coming into the faith. Now, all of this is really because we are turning to Baha'u'llah, obeying him, his teachings, obedience. If he is the voice of God, then he must be obeyed. Obedience. So now, so much about reciting the words in the morning and in the evening. And you know why we said all this about reciting the words in the morning and in the evening, how this came about, you remember? We were talking about the soul. We talked about the spirit of faith being born. This morning we talked about how the spirit of faith is born. How our soul becomes pregnant, becomes fertilized, by the influences of the revelation of Baha'u'llah, and how it will give birth to the spirit of faith. And then we said, now that you have given birth to, like a mother who has given birth to a child, you have to feed it. That's why we talked so much about reading the writings of Baha'u'llah. And I want to remind you again, there's a great difference between the writings, like tablets of Baha'u'llah, and his prayers. Prayers are different things, and writings are different things. And we said this morning how opposite of each other they are. You remember that. Now I want to go a little further. It's not only that we should read the writings and then everything will be fine. You have to do other things. Just as I said this morning, in order to live, you have to do a lot of things together. You have to eat, you have to sleep, you have to cook, you have to shop, you have to wear clothes, you have to do a lot of things to live. And it's the same thing in the faith. You have to do a lot of things together. The other subject that I want to bring up now, that is a subject which may be foreign to many of us. And I'll mention it frankly, it may be foreign to so many of us who come from the Christian background. Reading the writings is not foreign. Saying prayers is not foreign. But one of the laws of Baha'u'llah is the saying of obligatory prayers. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about this obligatory prayer so that you can see what it is. It is not just a prayer. This is something you must remember. It's not just a prayer. You cannot put it on the same level as ordinary prayers that we have. In the original language, there is a special word for it, which is different from prayer. But because there is no word in English to translate it into, it has been translated in this form of calling it obligatory prayer, to indicate it's an obligation to perform that rite. It's a Baha'i rite. It's the ritual. See, the faith is not without rituals. We have some rituals. But the only thing is this: these rituals are not man-made. These rites are given to us by Baha'u'llah. The saying of obligatory prayers is a religious rite.